Today's video, we're going to create a short composite, a quick composite, that's going to involve a photo of a person in front of a mirror. So you can either use the one that I provided for you here, or you can find your own on a website like Pixabay. You should be able to see both the person outside the mirror and the person inside the mirror as well. I'm going to start off by grabbing my pen tool or whatever selection tool you want, and I'm going to real quick cut this person out of the background of the mirror, but I'll leave everything else outside the mirror. But everything that's inside the mirror I will remove. Once we have the background of the mirror taken out, we can find a photo that we find of a background, some kind of landscape background. I've chosen this little forest here. You can choose whatever background you'd like, and I'm just going to position this in a layer underneath this original photo I have. Obviously resize it to whatever size you want, fit it in, just make sure you can't see anything of the transparency grid. You don't want to see any of those gray and white squares. Once that's done, I'm going to clean up my mask. I've used a layer mask with this. So whenever you use a photo of a person that has very wispy hair, you tend to want to you're either going to sacrifice some detail or you're going to have to make some detail to replace it. So I'm using a soft brush with black, or with a black color in order to sort of add to my layer mask here. So I'm just going to clean up the edges of her hair, and I'll speed this up. Once you have your initial composite done, now it's time to add in our text. I'm just going to type in any word, just a single word. Just grab your text element here. The word I chose was reflect. I figured it was fitting for this picture of a mirror, obviously whatever word you want to do. And just color it a complementary color here because we have a lot of green in the image. I'm going to choose a reddish color. Once you have it resized to your tastes, you can go ahead and right click on the layer and say new extrusion from layer, and what we'll do here is we'll just instead of doing anything with the object itself, we're going to orbit the camera to give it a sort of a bit of a angle to our viewpoint here. You can obviously adjust the lights if you want, and you can adjust a variety of things. But once you have that done, we'll go ahead and right click on this layer and we'll duplicate it, essentially creating two 3D layers. This might take a second. And once you have that done, we're going to click on the layer that's on the bottom here. Click on the 3D text that's on the bottom. And we're going to click on the image itself. And as soon as those little controls pop up, once we click on the image, I'm going to go over here to my 3D menu and just make sure I've got it selected there. I'm going to use this little controller here to move it along the Z-axis backwards until it seems as if it's sort of sitting inside the mirror. At least part of it is inside the little bounds of the mirror there. One thing you may want to do is you may want to click this little option down here that says render. What this does is it actually sharpens up all the shadows and it makes it look a lot nicer. Now what's happening here is it's just basically going through these the sort of effects that it's been placed on there. These are all sort of filters and effects, and it's just detecting all that, and it's making a more sharpened, more sort of maybe even realistic kind of representation of it inside this space, inside this 3D environment. I'm only going to do this to the one that's inside the mirror because she is focused in the mirror, but she's out of focus outside the mirror. So I'll leave this reflecting here, reflect sort of somewhat pixelated outside because we'll blur it out and we'll disguise it that way. One thing to note is that this takes a good long while. If you look down here at the bottom, it says it's going to take about 30 minutes. So if it starts to seem like it's taking too long, even letting it render a little bit and then pressing escape to stop the rendering will improve the look of it. So just let it render for as long as you feel comfortable for, if you don't want to have this be the entire thing that you do all day, because it does take up a lot of memory. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead from here. So once we have our 3D objects where we want them to be and we have them rendered to the way we want them to, let's see if we can't do some other compositing. We're going to mask out part of the word reflect in the mirror to make sure it doesn't show up past where the mirror bounds are. So just hide it back there. So I'm going to go over here and create a little path to exclude the areas that are outside the mirror. And then I'm going to create a vector, or rather a layer mask, and just right click on this path and fill it with black. So fill path, and just choose black, which will obviously obscure everything that's outside the mirror. If at any point you want to move your stuff around from your mask, you can obviously unlink those, but I think I'm satisfied with that. For the layer that's on the lady's shoulder, that's going to be, it's going to be obscured by her shoulder here, so we want to make sure we can see that there. First, what I'll do is I'll convert this to a smart object. And you may at this point want to convert the other object, the other 3D object, into a smart object as well. And then once you have that done and all your 3D elements are now smart objects, you can switch your workspace back to Essentials, which brings us back to familiar territory. So with the proper layer selected, with the layer that's near the woman's shoulder selected, I'm going to go over here to Filter, and I'm going to add a blur to match with the blurriness that she has. So I think I'm going to choose something around 15. And then we'll mask this out, once again using a combination of both our pen and our brushes. Once you have your 3D layers all masked out, you can add in the sort of master combination of all of them by holding on Control, Alt, Shift, and E. And from there, we can go into our camera raw filter, and we can add in several effects to kind of help blend this together. What I tend to do with things like this is take down things like, well, the temperature for one, depending on the kind of mood you're looking for. In this case, there's a lot of red, so I can pull this a little bit more towards green to kind of reduce some of the red there. I'll definitely pull down the exposure and a variety of other things, and I'll definitely pull down the contrast. The contrast obviously making colors look a little more, copacetic, a little less clashing. One thing to note about curves, if you choose red, you can bring the red values down to introduce more green to it. And if you bring up the blue values, you can reduce the amount of yellow in it. I'm going to use my color mixer to reduce the sort of saturation of the forest back there, just because it seems like it's sort of standing out a bit too much. So I just want to see if I can't get it to kind of blend in a bit more. And the last thing I'll do is add a vignette. So we've done gradient maps in the past, but what I found, if you go to Adobe Color and you just look up the word gradient map, you'll find lots of little color palettes that have been designed to create a fun little gradient map. So I'm going to go over here to my adjustment layers and find a gradient map adjustment layer on top of everything. And by opening up the colors, I can add in different stops. So this will require 5 stops all told. And I'm just going to add in the different colors that I found from that gradient map palette that I found on Adobe Color. As usual, I'll go down here to Fill, and I'll pull the Fill down to just reduce the effects, but to still have a little more kind of blending together of the overall color schemes here. So we can still tell what everything is. And I'll just export this as JPEG. All right, well, I can't wait to see you guys produce. I'll see you all in class.